we are doing a different direction. So usually we focus on one verb, but I notice people get these two mixed up a lot. So today we're going to be juxtaposing the difference between oír y escuchar. So oír versus escuchar. Because I've heard this kind of get interchanged a lot. A lot of people think they both mean to hear. A lot of people think they both mean to listen. But everything depends on the context. So we're going to be able to differentiate oír, which is to hear, and escuchar, which is to listen. And then we'll go over examples so that you can understand when do you use oír and when do you use escuchar, because there's different times that we use them to fit what it is that we want to say. So we'll go over some of the most common phrases, sentence structure, scenarios, things that are going to help you understand, and tricks to be able to understand when are you going to use oír and when is the best appropriate time to use escuchar. I knew something looked weird about that. Escuchar. How am I doing typos with handwriting? You would think this is a computer. I was like, I knew that looked short up there. So it's escuchar. Yeah. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled programming. Yes, oír versus escuchar and when to use both. And when to use both. Oh, hi, your fave 77. You said my favorite show is on. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Gracias por venir. Okay, so let's go over the differences between escuchar y oír and when exactly are we going to be able to use them. Because believe it or not, some people do get these mixed up. So it's best that we understand the difference now so that going forward, when you're using these in sentences and you're talking to people, you'll know which one to use and why we use it. So the top most clear differentiators is that whenever we're using the verb oír, that literally means to hear in the most physical sense. That's like your physical senses to hear. And it's an involuntary action. So it's involuntary. You just kind of hear things around you, hear noises, voices that aren't talking to you, other things like noises, audiences, members, all those kind of things. Oír is an involuntary passive type of hearing. Now, if you say escuchar, escuchar means to listen, and that is a more of an intentional act, like you are listening to your favorite music or you're listening to your conversation of whoever you're talking to. So to sum it up, oír is to hear, like on an involuntary physical level, and then escuchar is the intentional act of listening. And that's basically the difference of the two. Now, because we're going to be doing sentence structures and because we're going to be practicing scenarios, I put the conjugations so that we'll have our little answer key up here about when we use it for different ones. So oigo is yo. Oyes is the to form. Oye, the el, ella form. Oyen, ellos, ellas form. Oímos, nosotros. So just as a reminder, if you're not sure what these means, it's the I form as in I hear, you hear, he or she hears, they hear, we hear. Now over on this side, escucho, yo. Escuchas is the to form. Escucha is the el, ella form. Escuchan, ellos, ellas form. Escuchamos, the nosotros form. So in case we need to remember what these are, it is the I listen, you listen, he or she listens, they listen, and we listen. Okay? So somebody said, oh, this is good because at one time I didn't know there was a difference. Yeah, these are not interchangeable the way you would think. We do have contextual differences about when we're going to use each one. So for those of us just now joining us, we are going over the differences between oír and escuchar, which are similar, but they have different ways of being used. Oír is to hear, the most involuntary physical way of hearing. And then escuchar is the intentional act of listening. So both require you to use your ears, but one is going to be involuntary because you just hear things. And then the other is very intentional because you are listening to something or to somebody. Okay. Somebody says, out of curiosity, is there a difference between see and watch? Yeah. So thanks for the idea. We can cover that on a different live because to see, that is ver, and watch is mirar. So yeah, we can bring that up on another one. But yeah, that's a good question. There is a difference between those two as well. Robin says, good to know. Okay, yeah. All right, so let's get started. All right, so we went over what are our verbs for today, what are the definitions, and then what are going to be the conjugations, because we need these when it's time to put together our sentences and do examples. All right, so let's go over the first example. We'll start with the left side of the board, which is the oír side. So I'm going to write a sentence, and then we're going to explain and go over what this sentence is about. Okay, so we'll start with a very simple sentence. Oigo música. Oigo música. And what that translates to is I hear music. Okay? And the reason we're going to say oigo, because we're hearing music. What this sentence is really saying is that music is just there. They didn't say my favorite music. They didn't say my favorite music artist. They just said I hear music. So the underlying context of this is that it is passive. It's kind of just there. So let's put that in parentheses. It's just there. You could be walking through a parking lot and you can hear somebody's music coming from their speakers. It's kind of just like there. It's passive. So you could be like, oh, okay. Oigo música. I hear music. I hear music. Okay. So, but let's look at the other side of the board about when we would use escuchar. So for a sentence using that, we can say, estoy. For those of you all who remember our lesson about gerunds about a week ago, gerunds is basically the ing version in Spanish, where you're doing something actively. So escuchando, that's a gerund that we're using, the equivalent of ing. Escuchando, and this verb or this sentence translates to I'm listening. And so for this particular sentence, we use escuchando because, okay, I am listening. So the underlying context behind this is that, okay, it's a focused action. Like perhaps you're listening to the morning announcements if you are at school. Perhaps you're listening to the news on TV or on the radio. Perhaps you're listening to a phone call. So to say estoy escuchando, the meaning behind that is that you're focused on something. So escuchando, remember, that signifies an intentional act. So if ever anyone says escuchando, they're not just hearing anything, they're listening for something specific. This really, it entails something specific, focused, you're concentrated. So estoy escuchando. And so if we just wanted to add on to that sentence, we could be like, okay, estoy escuchando a las noticias. Like, okay, I'm listening to the news. That sounds like something that you would have to be very focused on because, okay, you got to hear what's going on in the world. That's a great explanation of that distinction. Okay, gracias, your fave 77. I'm glad I can make it easy for you. So that is one example. But of course, we go over several examples. Let's do another one to help understand the difference about when you're going to use these. So let's do the next sentence. So the next sentence could be like, actually, I'm going to write this further up top. That way I can have room to write the English at the bottom. Okay, so this sentence, oyes eso. So based off of this verb, what are they even saying here? Like, what is actually the right tense? Let's look up here. Oyes is the to form. Oyes. So that means, okay, they are talking to someone and they're asking a question too. Hola, Life Strategies. Leah says, you hear. Okay, so this is a question. So what it's really saying is, do you hear that? So, oyes eso? Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Do you hear that? It's kind of like they don't know what it is. That, they heard something passively, but they're unsure. There's no details. It's kind of like, okay, like, what was that noise? Like, what did you hear? So even the word that that tells you right there, like it's something like undisclosed, indistinct, something you didn't mean to hear. So it's some type of involuntary, because if they're asking, what is that? They don't know. And it's something involuntary. I don't know. Maybe it was a bird. Maybe it was rocks being thrown around. They're saying, okay, hey, do you hear that? And what they're saying when they say, do you hear that? Oyes eso. When you see oyes eso, they are deliberately talking about, okay, the most physical sense, like your actual ears. Like, did you hear that? That's an involuntary action. So I was like, okay, did you hear that? Or do you hear that? And that could mean anything. That could mean any noise. So, oyes eso. We wouldn't want to say, escuchas eso, because then that's like, okay, do you listen to that? And that doesn't sound right to say like, hey, do you listen to that? Because then that would be implying that you know what it is you're listening to. And it's not, because remember, to listen means it's something intentional. So if it was something intentional, you would know what you're listening to. You wouldn't have to ask that question. So the fact that they're asking you, do you hear that? That means it was something involuntary. And they are talking directly about your physical sense of hearing. Like, hey, do you hear that? Now let's look at this one. Escúchame. Escúchame is a command that means listen to me. So let's say if you were a teacher and you were teaching somewhere in South America, you could tell the class, hey, escúchame. If you're talking to one person, of course. You could tell like one student, like, hey, over there, Luis, escúchame. Like, hey, Luis, listen to me. And actually, there's a video that I actually did about a week ago here on TikTok that goes over the commands. So if you're looking to see and learn about Spanish commands, I did a video about that. But anyway, escúchame is literally listen to me. Like, it's a command. They're telling you, hey, I need you to intentionally focus on me here. Intentional. Because if someone says, listen to me, then they want you to focus. They want you to be intentional. They want it to be a real active action here, not a passive one. They want you to be active. So it's like, escúchame, hey, listen to me. I have something important to say. So there you go. Escúchame. Thank you. I thought something looked off. I was like, let me write that again. I was like, did I miss a C? I feel like I did that earlier too. Thank you. So it's escúchame. Escucha. I might as well erase the whole thing now. Escúchame. So yes, absolutely. So escúchame, listen to me. That is a command. They want you to actually literally listen to what they have to say. Okay. So those are two. That was an example of when we would use listen to me as escúchame. We wouldn't say, hey, oíme, because that's not a word anyway. Oíme is not even a word. So it's listen to me. All right. So that's how we're doing that. So as you can see from these examples, it's really good that you have comprehension and you look at context, because when you look at the context of a sentence, you'll know like, hey, I know this one is supposed to be a voluntary action, intentional one. Hey, that sounded like something that appeals to your physical senses. So that's why we're doing these scenarios, so that when you hear these in real life, you'll be able to understand what's the difference and why you're hearing that difference. All right. So let's do another example. So we could say, and we'll learn some new vocabulary words too, because you might not have seen this word before. I'm going to leave that part blank. But the translation of it is, I hear a noise. I hear a noise. So if we know that, okay, I hear a noise. So a noise, number one, that sounds like an involuntary action because nobody chooses to hear random noises. And it sounds like it's appealing to our physical sense. What do we think would go here? If we want to say, I hear a noise, remember it's I. So remember, it should be the yo form. It should be the yo form. Yes, some people are already putting the right answer in there. Yep, so we would put oigo. Oigo un ruido, which this means a noise. So this literally means I hear a noise. Oigo un ruido. Oigo un ruido, like, hey, I hear a noise. We wouldn't say I listen to a noise because then that would be like if you were to say escucho un ruido, that's very unnatural sounding because we know the context behind escucho is I listen, and that's an intentional type of action here. But if it's something involuntary, like you're not sure what it is, it's just something in nature, you don't know, it's involuntary, it appeals to your natural sense of hearing, it's proper to say oigo un ruido. Like, okay, I hear a noise, like some noise outside. I don't know, maybe it was a bird or the sounds of a car. Like you can be like in a parking lot and you be like, okay, oh, I hear a car noise. Oh, I hear something like that. So that's like an involuntary action. So oigo un ruido. Okay, because you didn't choose to hear the noise. That's not something you intentionally focused on. That's not something you chose to hear. So it's oigo, the most natural involuntary sense. Okay. All right, so now let's do another one. We're going to do another example here. So this one. Oh, wait, before I move on to the next one, I want to see if you all remember. Before we go on to the next one, we're going to head back over here to oír. Now, the first one was oigo un ruido. What if I wanted to say they hear a noise? They hear. What would I put in that blank if I want to say, hey, Ana y Luis, they hear a noise. They. Ana y Luis, something, a noise. Ana y Luis. Very good job. Yes, very good job. So you are paying attention to our conjugation chart up here. Two people, so okay. Oyen. Oyen, exactly. So that's how if it was more than one person. If I had like two friends, Ana y Luis, I could be like, Ana y Luis oyen un ruido. Like Anna and Luis hear a noise. Afuera. Outside. So yeah, so that's one way to do it. Just, making sure you all understand the conjugations. And, I like to introduce y'all to new vocabulary words and how to lengthen our sentences, because the goal here is not to just do like, the two little sentences or two words in a sentence like, oh, oigo un ruido. That's only 3 words. I want y'all to get comfortable exploring with different types and longer sentences. So eventually it could be Ana y Luis oyen un ruido afuera, which is Ana and Luis, they hear a noise outside. All right, so this says this. Oh, they said thanks for being here. No problem. Okay, so I'm glad to be here with you guys. All right, now let's move back over to the other side of the board. And thank you all for the stickers and those little hearts and everything else that you all are sending. Sorry if I don't know exactly what some of that stuff is, but thank you for sending it. That is very sweet. Let me just scroll back up the chat to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Okay, how about when you are in a call and the other person doesn't hear you clearly? Good question. So yeah, if they don't hear you clearly, okay, then now that sounds like you're appealing to your physical sense. That's like actual hearing. Like, okay, if you can't hear a noise, you can't hear a person, they're not talking clearly, you would use oír in that case. Like, okay, you're not talking clearly enough. Like, okay, like if you were to say, I'll give you an example. Say you're at the airport, or in your case, you're on the phone and the phone is muffled. You could be like, okay, puedes hablar más alto, no te oigo, which is, okay, can you talk louder? Can't hear you. So in that case, Jing, you're talking about oír. Okay. All right, so the next one, let's go back over to our other side of the board, escuchar. And let me see if you all can get this one. If you haven't noticed by now, we're in our game time era. This is where I quiz you all and we play games. So we're in the game era here. So we'll put a blank here because we don't know what we're going to use or what form of that verb we're going to use. Okay. Blank música todos los días. Something música todos los días. What would we put there? What would we put there in that blank? So it is something music every day. Good job, Maisha. Good job, Cheyenne. Yes, Aza and Amis and Winner and Wish. Very good. Yes. So those who put escucho in the chat, good job, Shara. This is escucho. Escucho. Escucho música todos los días. All right. So it's I listen to music every day. Exactly. I listen to music every day. Now, the reason why we say escucho, I listen, is because this is an intentional action. Because look at the rest of the sentence. Every day. If you're doing something every day, do you think that's an involuntary passive action? Or do you think that is intentional and you genuinely want something because you're doing this every day? You didn't say, oh, I hear like music in the parking lot sometimes when I come home from work. No, you said, I listen to music every day. I listen to music every day. So that is escucho. Escucho. Exactly. And thank you all for the gifts. That's so sweet that you guys are sending those. Thank you. So yeah, escucho, that signifies I listen to music every day. I listen to music every day. All right. Because most people who listen to every day, if they listen to music every day, like on their phone or they're going exercising, I would assume that they want to be listening to music every day. And it just depends on if it's something that you want to do because you want to do that. So for Wish over there, it says, okay, you hear those birds every day. Well, that sounds like something that's involuntary. So that's where context comes in at. This is all about what is the context. Is it going to be intentional or is it involuntary? If you're hearing birds every day, like outside your window, most people don't want to hear that. So you would say, oigo los pájaros todos los días, like I hear the birds every day. So remember, it's involuntary versus an intentional action. All right. Now we got a different kind of a game to play here. We have a different kind of a game. But before we get to that, I do want to give you all a couple of helpful phrases. This is a very common one. Escúchame bien. Listen to me carefully. Listen to me carefully. Okay, that is one. And yes, life strategies. But if you did want to hear the birds, it would be escuchar. So yes, if you are talking back about intentionality, like, wow, if you do want to hear the birds, you could be like, yeah, I listen to the birds sing every day because now that's something that you want to do. Estoy escuchando a los pájaros cantando afuera. I'm listening to the birds singing outside. All right. Now, here's another one to someone else's point earlier. This is also a phrase like, let's say you are traveling at the airport. Maybe you are traveling down to Latin America, somewhere in Central America, and maybe you need to talk to somebody on the phone and they're not talking very clearly. You can say, puedes hablar Más alto. No te oigo. So for a person that is not talking very loud and you can't hear them, well, that's resulting from your physical sentence. You physically cannot hear them loudly, so you're gonna have to ask them to speak up. Like, hey, can you talk louder? No te oigo. So that's how that is. Exactly, Wish. Yes, that's exactly how you would say that one. So yeah, just, a nice way of saying that if ever you come across a Spanish speaker and you need them to talk louder, maybe they're mumbling, maybe they're not talking enough, so you can say that, just tell them that. Okay. Now, for this part of the game, we're in for a different type of a game. Do y'all remember in high school, or not high school, really any school, there would be those true or false questions where the teacher will want you to mark T or F, true or false? Well, for this kind of game, it's going to be O or E, standing for oír or escuchar. So I'm going to write a sentence, and then you put in the chat O or E to tell me which one we're going to use. We are listening to music. Destiny says, what does escúchame? Escúchame mean? It means listen to me. Yep, thank y'all in the chat. Yep, it means listen. Okay. Wow, you guys are already putting your answers in already. Yeah, very good. Very good. Yep, the answer is E for escuchar. Exactly. We are listening to music. Now, can anybody say why it's the letter E? Like, why? Why exactly is it the letter E? Because it's a choice. Absolutely. It's intentionality. Absolutely. Intentionally. Yep, you guys got it right. You guys got it exactly right. Okay. All right, now let's do, we can say, do you hear that? Put your answers in the chat. Do you hear that? Yes, absolutely. Excelente. O as in oír. Yep. And so, yeah, it's going to be O because that's unintentional. They ask, did you hear that? So if you don't know what it is and you have no idea what they're talking about, if they're asking you, do you hear that? Then clearly that can't be anything intentional. That sounds like an involuntary physical attribute of hearing physically. So it's O. Exactly, you guys. You guys did a great job.